Have video games gotten worse? Yes and no at the same time. On one hand, I would argue that the amount of passion put into video games as a whole has most likely gotten worse, yeah. Because I feel like when you take, old games, they were always trying to do something new, They were always trying to sort of find out what the next big thing was going to be and sort of just like improve on what they've already done. And if they don't know what else to improve on, they would just create something new. And I think most of that formula is gone in today's standard. I think video games now are a lot more sort of overlooked. I think they go through too many levels of checking. It's like the developer creates the game, then his funds, the people who fund him check it, and then they give it to someone else, they check it, and there's just like a bunch of essentially just tomfoolery going on uh, before the game gets out there. Whereas like in the 2000s or 2010s, like early 2010s, there was definitely a lot less of that. I think it was more so just developers sort of creating something and then being like, hey, you know what, we're just gonna see if it works. If it doesn't, just screw it, I guess. Like, we'll just dump it out there either way. I think that's how most good games, like at least fun games, were created. I think it was just a bunch of guys, a bunch of developers, just seeing what worked for them and what didn't. And whenever they thought of something that was like fun, they were like, okay, I feel like this could be, a cool system, or this could be, it has potential, Whereas I feel like nowadays there's a lot less creativity when creating some of today's games. For example, like we could say the Wolverine game from Insomniac. That one's coming in, and I think from what I saw from the trailer, it has some cool things in it, but I think it's just a very, I want to say, unoriginal concept. I think they could definitely make it a lot cooler. I think they could improve on how the game plays a little bit, because based off what I saw in the trailer, it was too sort of just too casual, I want to say. It's sort of like a tried and true formula where they're afraid to do anything new or different, because they think, hey, if this doesn't work, then we're not going to get funding to make this project, or if this doesn't work, then we might lose out on a lot of money, which is true. If they launch something bad or terrible, they are going to lose money out like on that thing. But I think it's better to take risks and to sort of try out new formulas, new ideas, experiment a little bit. Because if developers, sort of keep doing the same thing that they've been doing over and over again, and just trying to improve little by little on systems that have already been, in a sense, perfected or already, tried, I think if developers experiment more and if they come out with new ideas, new stuff, that they will have more success in them, to be honest with you. Because you can only take one system so far until the formula just gets dry. People just burn out of it. We could take, like, I guess you could say Resident Evil. This is a very, very hard game to sort of look down upon, or series rather. I myself have played, I think, like 7 or 8 of the Resident Evil games, and I can say they're absolutely amazing. They are definitely great games. My favorite one is probably Resident Evil 4 from 2005, and my runner-up would be like, I'd probably say 2 remake. I know that's kind of like a, basic answer, but either way, the point I'm trying to make is that series has a formula of backtracking, replayability, you know, sort of just keeping the player engaged in something that's fun and something that's quick and that you can experiment a lot with. Like, for example, in Resident Evil 4, you can speedrun that game, you have mercenaries, you have tons of different ways to play it because, you have multiple guns. And I think the entire gameplay of Resident Evil 4, specifically, the OG one, is just perfected in a way because of the AI, the art style, the weapons, the animations, the way that you interact with the enemies. I think it's perfected to its own system, which makes Resident Evil 4 such a good game. But the thing with the Wolverine game is, I think it's sort of relying too much on a system that's already been established by Insomniac Spider-Man, that series, Miles Morales, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2. I think it's relying too much on the system that's been established by those games to the point where I feel like it's sort of wasting potential, Definitely. I think if they made the gameplay a little bit more hack and slash, a little bit more tight, more fast paced, and just sort of got rid of stealth. I think that's a big thing because Wolverine is such an action heavy character and he's really explosive and he's really, strong and fast. And anytime that you do see Wolverine, he's usually like in a very action heavy setting. And I think if you're playing the game and you're hacking and slashing for like 3 hours straight, or maybe even 2 hours, and then you sort of get into a stealth section that I want to say drags on to about 5 or 10 minutes, I think that's going to be a huge problem in the pacing of the game, considering the fact that it's supposed to be a character that's always in action, that's always sort of fighting. And stealth is good, but I don't think it works for Wolverine as a character. I think it worked for Spider-Man great because Spider-Man is more of a, he's a strong character, but he has that disadvantage of being outnumbered, so he has to take precaution. He has to sort of analyze the environment before he engages in a fight. Where I feel like Wolverine is sort of just a bioweapon, so much so to the point that no matter who he faces, he can still just, just beat them, regardless of how many there are, regardless of how strong they are. It's sort of like they're trying to bring over a system from a completely different character and sort of use the same system for Wolverine. Like Spider-Man and Wolverine are not the same character. They don't play the same. Which, they probably could make it work, and for a majority of, audiences, or for a majority of the audience, a lot of people are going to like it because it definitely works as a, game. I mean, most people are just looking to play as Wolverine and don't really care too much about how perfected the gameplay is or how the system works or, all that stuff. So I think if Insomniac just makes a good story, I think they definitely will do good. Like the Wolverine game is going to do pretty good, because it has good combat, it has good movement. I would say it's probably going to have a good narrative. So it's definitely going to sell, it's no one's not going to buy Wolverine and well, not buy, like no one's going to buy Wolverine and think, yeah, this is a waste of money. This game is terrible. Because no matter what Insomniac does, if they just have a good package, the game will sell and people will enjoy it. Which sort of spikes like this, I want to say, problem of, diversity. I think we're going to get to a point in video games where characters, combat systems, stealth systems aren't going to be diverse enough to sort of separate one game from another. if that makes sense. I think we're gonna reach a point where like a time that comes in video games where everything is just gonna look exactly the same. Every game is gonna play out the same. Every game is gonna have the same system, and I think that's essentially gonna be where gaming ends as an industry. I think once we reach that point of, just too much similarity, too much perfection, I think that's when a lot of people are just going to completely leave gaming because, well, either that or they're just going to go back and play old games. But I think it's important to sort of, for every game to sort of keep its own identity in a way, like I'm afraid that games that are going to come out, they're going to be too similar to previous ones. Like, for example, GTA 6. I really hope that Rockstar delivers with that. I really hope that it's not just a reskin of GTA 5 and, they just updated the graphics a little bit. I really hope that Wolverine has its own identity in its, combat system that makes it different from Spider-Man. It's important to have these, I don't want to say limitations, but these differences in games that sort of make each and every experience more enjoyable. So I definitely do think that there is a change of how developers make and create games now compared to how they used to make them, 10, 20 years ago. Do I think it's a worse way of making games? I would say for the majority part, not really. I think there definitely is some ways that are worse than, what they were 10, 20 years ago in terms of like creating the game. But I think they also have some features that are definitely a lot better. I think that it's important for developers to find new strategies and to make new things that are fun. I don't want them to keep sticking with the same formula over and over again. I don't want them to make any more remakes. I just want them to experiment more and just sort of try out new things and just see what sticks. It's better to have multiple projects with a low budget than one big project with a high budget, because if you have one project with a high budget and that fails, you're at a massive loss in terms of money. But if you have multiple projects, if one project fails, another one succeeds, then you know what sticks, and you also don't lose out on any money. So to sort of wrap up the video, I think that video game developers should put in more passion for sure. I think a lot of developers now are just sort of worried about, is this game gonna, make us money or not? I think they need to make more games that are just passion projects. And I think, they just need to experiment more. So, yeah, that's about it. See ya.